spending time with my son and my grandson and his fiance and their family was absolutely glorious. I like to say I got to marry my grandson, but that doesn't sound too good. So I got to marry my grandson and his fiance, and it was so beautiful out in a desert canyon, as only Arizona can show itself off with its saguaro cactus and its mountains. It was just perfect. And when I pronounced them husband and wife, I said, now by the authority vested in me, and as your grandmother, I now pronounce you husband and wife, and that was perfect ending. So. But today, you know, in Unity, we honor all paths that lead to God, and since we were just in Arizona, I thought I'd talk about the Hopi culture today. It's a culture that I feel on a soul level very close to. And it's an example of how we all believe the same thing in the divine spirit and a higher power. We just look at it differently, interpret it differently. And so I'd like to show you an example before I get into what I'm going to talk about. The truth is truth. We just see it differently. For example, if you're a Taoist, you would say, well, I'm going to use the expression, stuff happens. Now, you know what the real word is, but in church I thought I'd say stuff instead of the real word. So see how stuff happens. You just go with it, right? That's a Taoist. In Confucianism, you'd say, Confucius say stuff happens, all right? A Buddhist would say, if stuff happens, it isn't really stuff. I'm not sure what that one means, but it's interesting. Now, as Zen Buddhists, I understand a little better. What is the sound of stuff happening? Or if stuff happens in the woods and no one is listening, has it really happened, all right? A Hindu would say, this stuff has happened before. In Islam, they would say, if stuff happens, it is the will of Allah. Now, a Protestant would say, let's reform this stuff. A Catholic would say, you need to feel guilty about that stuff. An agnostic would say, what is this stuff? And an atheist would say, I don't believe this stuff. In Judaism, they'd say, why does this stuff always happen to us? And a Jehovah's Witness would say, let me into your home and I'll tell you why this stuff happens. But what do we do in Unity? We say, let's affirm this stuff away, all right? In our union with God, we are greater than this stuff. Do I hear an amen? Amen. All right, we got that one down. So getting back to our Arizona trip and being out there where the energy of the Hopi culture is, that's not the only tribe in Arizona, but it's the one my heart feels the closest to. I don't claim to be an expert. I probably know just enough to be dangerous. As a true Gemini knows about everything on that level, but I feel that deep connection. Maybe it's past life, I don't know. But the Hopi are the most ancient and mysterious of all the tribes, and there are so many legends and theories of where they came from. Were they part of the Anasazi that mysteriously disappeared? Did they walk across from Tibet? Are they from Atlantis? They say they're from the stars. It's a mystery, and I love a good mystery. All I know is when I'm with them and I look into their eyes, you know how they say your eyes are the window to your soul? And I just feel that deep sense of connection, that peace and that spirit that they carry. They live in the house of truth. They truly do. Now, the Hopi village is on 3 mesas, way in a desolate area. And first I have to take a break here. When I lived in Arizona, the first thing I had to do was know the difference between a mesa, a mountain, and a butte. So a little class here today. Keep up, there'll be a test later. A mesa is a flat. It's Spanish word for table. So mesa is a flat, standing like a mountain, but only it's flat. A butte stands alone, but a mountain is a range, part of a range. So we got the mesa, which is what? Flat, like a table. We got the butte, which stands what? Alone. And the mountain, which is part of a what? A range. You got it down. Now, I'm still not sure what the difference between a pine, a pinyon, and a fir, and I grapple with that here in Tennessee too. What's a Georgia pine different than the other pine? I still haven't learned all those, but it gives me something to work on, right? Now, as I mentioned, the Hopi Mesas are in such a desolate area, but people go there by the busloads. Why would they go so far away? I think it's because they feel the spirit of the land and the spirit of the people. It's proof that wherever you are, God is, right? Even in the most desolate of areas. Some of you remember the name of Major John Wesley Powell. If you've ever been to the Grand Canyon, you've seen the video. He was the first man to take a boat expedition down the Grand Canyon. And he said, talking of the Hopi, the people are very hospitable and quite ceremonious. They are also very polite. If you meet them out in their fields, they salute you with a greeting, which seems to mean, may the birds sing happy songs in your fields. All together now. Oh. Now, that's almost too cutesy because they're such a dignified people, but I figure it's better than some of the salutes we get in our own cultures. Hopi means well-behaved, well-mannered, a formal and dignified people. They just stand in the center of their being. Now, unfortunately, when the government put people on reservations, they put them with the Navajo, not knowing that years ago, no longer, but years ago they were enemies, and yet they were placed on the same reservation. But the Hopi, in their generous and humble way, said, you take the good land, we will live up on the mesas. That's their generosity and their total knowing that they could rely on spirit, that they didn't need anything else. I once took a church tour up to the Hopi Mesas, and one of the women on the tour totally misunderstood the loss of prosperity. She said, well, these people don't have a prosperity consciousness. They don't have anything. I thought, wow, you haven't been listening. A prosperity consciousness means you know how to rely totally on spirit, that all your needs will be met. It's not about having $1 million in the bank. It's that you rely totally on spirit. And the Hopi people have survived for a long, long time in this desolate area with very little water because they totally rely on spirit. And they have a different idea of what is important. Where we might see a limited water supply, their plants grow. They listen to spirit and learned how to plant to catch and savor every little drop of moisture. The observer determines the outcome. So where we see lack, they see abundance and know their oneness with source and substance. Kind of like Jesus when he said, I have food that you don't know of, the living waters of spirit within. And quantum physics is now proving that by seeing that spiritual substance of subatomic particles of light that we are made of, the living waters, the food that others don't know about. Where in our desert experience, don't we all have desert experiences, we may feel abandoned by God, they celebrate God in all, even the desert experiences. And where we see separation, they see oneness in it all, that we're all a part and everything is a part of the one presence, one power. Now, Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, in his book, The Daily Word, which he defines definitions of certain words, he talked about what is the desert experience. And I know you've all been there. He said, a desert place in the consciousness of man is a seen lack of substance in life. So anytime you see lack, you're in a desert experience. In truth, desert experiences don't really exist. From the viewpoint of spirit, there is no lack. Where God is, there are his inexhaustible resources. God is everywhere present. And the Hopi know how to live that. Now, they would not use the term religion, but they have a complex series of daily and annual ceremonies, and they dance and bring rain to their crops. And they insist that their dances keep the world turning around. And I would not argue with them about that at all. You feel it when they dance. And if they believe they're keeping the world turning around, I'm certainly going to be in agreement with them. Now, I was so fortunate I brought my things I've accumulated over the years that are Hopi. The kachinas, the little statues there made out of cottonwood root, represent the divine attributes. We would like our angels represent each something different. And so they're very popular there. I was very pleased to get these at the Hopi Mesas directly from the artists. Some of them even invited us into their homes. And so they weren't from a gift shop, they were directly from the artists, so they have a special meaning for me. My jewelry, they're interesting how they make their rings. They take a wire and carve up and down through the metal. I can't even explain it very well, but you can look at it later if you want. And I have my Kokopelli on. I think this might be Navajo, but that's okay, very close. And the pottery dish was given to me by a Hopi woman who said she went to the river every week to get clay and came back and made her little bowls. So these are my treasures if you want to look at them afterwards. I once owned the Book of the Hopi. I don't know if anybody here has ever read the Book of the Hopi, but it tells their history and their beliefs. You could call it their scriptures. Truth is truth, no matter who you are. And all philosophies, it's really interesting to compare our scriptures with theirs, and here's some of the similarities. So this is their creation story. The first world was endless space, an immeasurable void that has its beginning and end, time and shape and life in the mind of the Creator. Notice the word void there, similar to our scripture. He gathered that which was to be manifested as solid substance, molded it into form, and said, "It is very good." What does our scripture say? It is good. So the first people kept multiplying and spreading over the face of the land and were happy. Although they were of different colors and spoke different languages, they felt as one and understood one another without talking. Oh, I'd have to work on that one. It was the same with birds and animals. They all felt as one, people and animals. But then along came the talker. He came in the form of a bird, like a mockingbird. We've got mockingbirds. We know how much they like to talk. And the more he kept talking, the more he convinced them of the differences between them. By reason of differences of the color of their skin or their speech, those who remembered the plan of the Creator and those who did not. There came among them a handsome one in the form of a snake with a big head. Listen to this. Tell me if this reminds you of anyone. He led the people still further away from one another and their pristine wisdom. They became suspicious of one another and accused one another wrongly until they became fierce and warlike and began to fight one another. Feels like we're repeating that all over again, doesn't it, in some way? So eventually the first world was destroyed. The Ice Age came. And when the Ice Age came, they were forced underground to survive. And then when the ice melted, they were forced back up again. And their legends say they come from underground in the Grand Canyon. Now, let's take a little break here. I love a good conspiracy theory, don't you? This is in the For What It's Worth department. It has nothing to do with any message today, but this is a true story. You can Google it. In 1909, the Phoenix Gazette newspaper, front story on the Phoenix Gazette in 1909, there was a discovery of huge underground caverns in the Grand Canyon that had artifacts that looked Egyptian or Tibetan. Now, the authorities later denied this, but yet they put that area off limits to the public, and it's been off limits ever since. Nee, don't you love a good conspiracy theory? I love a good mystery. They reflect the magic and the mystery of life, the mystery that's lost from within us. Even Joseph Campbell said, we're not seeking for meaning in life, but the experience of being alive, to feel the rapture of being alive, and the Hopi dance, the dance of life, and the dance of that mystery. We don't have to go to the mesas to experience that mystery. We just have to be still and know, and go to that secret place of the Most High within us. Quiet our minds, and don't forget to dance. Let us take that into prayer. We connect with that wisdom and that truth that moves in and through all people of all cultures, of all philosophies. We stand in the truth along with others who are standing in their truth. Our oneness with divine and our oneness with each other. We exist in the beauty of our spirit, in our uniqueness and our oneness. And we go forth today with great joy, honoring the Hopi and honoring each other in the spirit of grace. And so it is. Amen.